The New York Times and the LA Times published some studies earlier this week that pointed to the value of video games as a way to sharpen our minds. And not just among millennials, those 35 and under, but for older Americans as well. Apparently, video games can provide the kind of mental exercise their brains need. But what kind of video games were they talking about? That's a question I asked licensed psychologist Dr. Wendy Rice.
So when the average person thinks of a video game, we think of Halo, Grand Theft Auto, Minecraft, all those everyday games that our kids are begging to play and that a lot of men are out there spending their time doing. When we're talking about games in scientific studies, typically they are specific games that hone in on a specific skill set. So whether it's strategic thinking or planning or being able to pay attention to one thing or multiple things or memory. So we're talking about two different things. We're not talking about violent first-person shooter video games.
What is it that they are enabling us to do when we engage in them?
They typically start out at a level that people can really master. And then little by little, in very small increments, they get harder. So if it's a game that's trying to strengthen your visual memory, for example, it may start out with just 1, 2, or 3 things. Then it may go to 4 things. Then the things might move around on the screen so that you have to keep track of what they were because you can't count on location as a way to remember them. And then maybe they add in a memory thing where they go away and then they come back. So when you're trying to strengthen a specific skill like visual memory, you want a game that hones in, or an exercise that hones in on that and then gets exponentially harder, which isn't that much different than a regular video game where you reach level upon level and upon level. But here we're trying to target a specific skill area.
What does this mean for practical application or everyday activity for some of our older listeners who may be, and by older listeners, we're talking about anybody that's 35 plus, who may not be, yes, I wanted to make that perfectly clear, who may not be a video game aficionado, but this study indicates there's some value to participating in these kinds of activities.
A good example is you wouldn't go to the gym once a week for a half hour and expect your body to be transformed. But if you went to the gym 4 or 5 days a week for a half hour, 45 minutes, you would expect to see difference. It would last for X amount of time, but you might need to keep going to maintain it. And if you stop going for a while, you might lose a little bit of the ground. So the implications for regular people is that whether you use CogMed or I use Mind Power Builder from a company called Brain Train, using a very, very good product can help you to strengthen your brain functioning if you put in the time.
Good stuff.
Powerful. I've seen amazing changes in people.
That is Dr. Wendy Rice with Rice Psychology Group.